In a 1955 pantry, you'd find food that had no business still being edible. Eggs laid in spring, eaten at Christmas. Runner beans picked in July, served in February. Butter that never once saw a fridge. No best before dates, no cling film, no freezer humming in the corner. Just hard-won knowledge passed down through hungry generations who could not afford to waste a single scrap. Number 14 on this list kept eggs fresh for 8 months using something you'd find under the kitchen sink. And number 3 was so effective that the food industry quietly buried it. Because if you still did it, you'd stop filling half your trolley. Hit subscribe, because these 25 forgotten preserving tricks could genuinely save you a fortune. Let's count down. Number 25. Apples wrapped in newspaper. Your nan never bought apples in November. She ate her own, picked in October, and still crisp in March. The trick was the wrapping. Each unblemished apple got rolled in a square of newspaper, twisted at the ends like a sweet, then laid in a single layer on slatted wooden trays in the cool of the shed. They were never allowed to touch. One rotten apple gives off ethylene gas that turns its neighbors soft within days, so the paper kept each one in its own little quarantine. A loft full of trays could carry a family right through to spring. A box of cooking apples cost next to nothing off your own tree, and that newspaper was free off the doormat. Today we pay 40 pence a piece for cold store apples flown in from the other side of the world. Number 24. Herbs dried in bundles. Come late summer, the kitchen ceiling looked like a witch's larder. Bunches of sage, thyme, mint and bay hanging upside down from the aira. Your nan cut them just before flowering, when the oils were strongest, tied the stems with string and hung them somewhere warm, dry and out of the sun. Sunlight bleached the color and the flavor clean away, so the airing cupboard or a beam above the range was perfect. 2 weeks later, the leaves crumbled to dust between her fingers, and she'd stripped them into old jam jars labeled in pencil. That single afternoon's work seasoned stews and stuffings until the following summer. A penny packet of seed gave you a whole year's herbs. We now pay £1.20 for a plastic pot that wilts on the windowsill inside a week. Number 23. Onions plaited and hung. Nothing said a well-run kitchen like a thick rope of onions hanging by the back door. Your nan lifted them in late summer, left them on the path to dry until the necks went papery, then plaited the dry tops together into a long braid using a length of garden twine as the backbone. Hung in the cold porch, never the warm kitchen, they kept for 6 months without a single soft one. The plait let air move round every bulb, and you simply snipped one off as you needed it. Garlic got the same treatment. A whole row's harvest cost only the seed onions she'd saved from last year. Now we buy them 3 at a time in a net bag that goes mouldy in the salad drawer before we've used half. Number 22. Root vegetables in boxes of sand. Once the first frost threatened, your nan was out lifting carrots, beetroot and parsnips, and they went straight into a job no fridge can do. She'd half fill a wooden crate with bone-dry sand, lay the roots in so none touched, cover them with more sand, and stack the boxes in the shed. The sand held just enough moisture to stop them shriveling, while keeping out the light and air that make them sprout and rot. Potatoes got an earth clamp, a heap piled on straw, covered with more straw and a skin of soil, with a little chimney of straw poking out so they could breathe. A clamp could hold a sack of spuds sound until April. Free storage, no electricity, and the carrots came out as firm as the day they were pulled. Number 21. Salted runner beans in a crock. Long before chest freezers, this was how every garden glut of beans survived the winter. Your nan topped, tailed and sliced the beans, then packed them into a big glazed stoneware crock in layers. A thick handful of beans, a fistful of cooking salt, beans, salt, pressed down hard with her knuckles each time. The salt drew the water out, made its own brine, and created an environment where nothing could spoil. A weighted plate kept everything submerged. Stored in the cold larder, that crock fed the family green beans in the dead of winter. The catch was the rinsing. Soak them in 3 changes of water for 2 hours, or supper tasted like the sea. A few pence of salt preserved a whole summer's crop. Half forgotten now, but it never once let her down. Number 20. The meat safe and the cold larder. Before the fridge arrived, the whole north wall of the house did its job for free. The larder faced away from the sun, had a cold slate or marble shelf, and a small mesh window to let cold air in and keep flies out. Inside sat the meat safe, a little cupboard with perforated zinc or fine gauze sides that let air circulate while blue bottles stayed firmly on the wrong side. Milk sat in a bowl of cold water under a damp muslin cloth, the evaporation pulling the heat away. Butter, cheese, cooked meats and the Sunday joint all kept for days in that gentle, breathing cold. No electricity, no hum, no bill. When the first fridges arrived in the 1950s at over £100, plenty of families wondered what on earth they'd been missing. Number 19. Pickled onions in malt vinegar. Every autumn the kitchen reeked gloriously of vinegar and spice, and your eyes stung for a week. Your nan peeled pounds of small pickling onions, a miserable, tearful job done with a knife held under cold water. Then brined them overnight to draw out moisture and keep them crisp. Next day, they went into jars and were drowned in malt vinegar that she'd spiced herself with mustard seed, peppercorns, and a dried chili, sometimes boiled first, sometimes poured cold for extra crunch. Sealed tight, they were forbidden for a full 6 weeks while the flavor matured. By Boxing Day, they were sharp, fierce, and perfect with cold pork and a wedge of cheese. A jar of shop pickles is over £1 now, full of nothing. Hers cost pennies and could sit on the shelf for 2 years. Number 18. Green tomato chutney. When the September frost loomed and the greenhouse was still full of stubbornly green tomatoes, nothing was wasted. Your nan chopped the lot, green tomatoes, onions, a few apples, and simmered them for hours with sugar, sultanas, spices, and a great glug of vinegar until the kitchen window ran with condensation and the whole street could smell it. The vinegar and sugar together did the preserving, dropping the acidity and locking out anything that could spoil. She knew it was done when a wooden spoon drawn across the pan left a clean channel that didn't fill with liquid. Potted hot into warm jars and sealed, that chutney was actually banned from being eaten for 3 months. It needed to mellow. It then kept for 2 or 3 years, getting better all the time. A summer's failures turned into the best thing in the cupboard. Number 17. Piccalilli, the mustard pickle. That vivid, almost radioactive yellow jar was a post-war miracle of thrift. Your nan took the odds and ends of the garden: cauliflower, marrow, beans, little onions, cucumber, salted them overnight to firm them up, then bound them in a thick mustard and turmeric sauce sharpened with vinegar. The turmeric gave the color, the mustard the kick, and the vinegar did the keeping. The skill was in the sauce, thick enough to cling to every floret, never claggy, never split. It made a feast out of a heel of cold ham and a stale crust, and it brightened the dreariest winter plate. A batch used up the scraps no one knew what to do with and lasted the best part of a year on the shelf. Shop Piccalilli has never come close to that homemade tang and crunch. Number 16. Jam, and the science your nan knew by heart. Here's where it gets interesting. Your nan wasn't just boiling fruit and sugar for fun. She was running a chemistry experiment she'd never have called one. The rule was equal weights of fruit and sugar, and that ratio wasn't tradition for tradition's sake. At that concentration, sugar pulls so much water out of any stray mold or yeast spore that nothing can survive. It's the exact same principle that preserves honey for 1,000 years. She tested the set on a cold saucer, pushing the cooling jam with a fingertip to see if it wrinkled. Underripe fruit went in deliberately because it carried more natural pectin and acid to make it set firm. Damsons, plums, blackberries from the hedgerow that cost nothing at all. Sealed under a wax disc and cellophane, a jar of proper homemade jam happily kept for 2 years. We pay for low-sugar versions today that go furry in a fortnight. Number 15. Seville marmalade in January. For 2 short weeks every January, the bitter Seville oranges appeared in the greengrocers, and your nan dropped everything. She'd buy pounds of them because they only came once a year, and the whole point was to make enough to last until the next. Hours of work followed, squeezing juice, slicing peel into fine shreds by hand, tying the pips and pith in a muslin bag, because that's where the setting pectin hid. Then the long boil with sugar until it reached that magic setting point. The kitchen turned sticky and sharp and wonderful. A morning's labor produced a dozen jars of dark, bitter, glowing marmalade, enough toast topping to see the family through to the following winter. It cost a few shillings in oranges and sugar. That jar lasted years, and it tasted of a craft we've almost entirely handed over to factories. Number 14. Eggs preserved in water glass. This is the one that sounds like magic. In spring and summer, hens lay far more eggs than a family can eat. In autumn and winter, they barely lay at all. So your nan stored the summer surplus to eat in the lean months, and she did it with water glass. She'd dissolve sodium silicate, a syrupy stuff bought cheaply from the chemist, in a bucket of boiled water, then gently lower in fresh, clean, unwashed eggs until they were fully submerged. The solution sealed every pore in the shell, locking out the air and bacteria that spoil an egg. Kept in the cold larder, those eggs stayed good for 8 or 9 months, eaten at Christmas though laid in June. The only rule was, never wash them first, because washing strips the natural protective bloom. A few pence of water glass preserved dozens of eggs. Almost no one alive remembers it now. Number 13. Greasing eggs to seal them. If she hadn't a bucket of water glass to hand, your nan had an even simpler trick. She'd take each fresh egg and rub it all over with a thin film of lard, butter, or even Vaseline, sealing the thousands of tiny pores in the shell that let moisture out and air in. Greased and stored, pointy end down in a cool, dark cupboard, an egg could keep fresh for several months, the fat doing the job the hen's natural bloom does, only better and for longer. Pointy end down kept the air sac at the top and the yolk cushioned in the center, away from the shell where it could stick and spoil. It cost nothing but a smear of fat she already had in the pan. Try telling a modern shopper their eggs only last a week or 2 in the fridge. Your nan would have laughed. Number 12. Potted meat and shrimp under butter. Long before vacuum packs, fat was the seal. After a roast, your nan would mince the last scraps of meat, beat them with seasoning into a smooth paste, press them into little pots, and pour a layer of clarified butter over the top. As it cooled, that golden lid set hard and airtight, locking out every speck of oxygen, and the potted meat kept for weeks in the cold larder. Potted shrimps got the same treatment, drowned in spiced butter, a delicacy that started life as a way of saving a glut of catch. The principle is ancient: no air, no spoilage. Spread on hot toast on a Sunday tea time, it tasted like a treat, not a leftover. A whole second meal conjured from the bones of the first for the price of a knob of butter. Nothing on the Sunday joint ever escaped her. Number 11. Bottling fruit in Kilner jars. Controversy incoming, because the food industry would much rather you forgot this one entirely. Every summer your nan turned soft fruit into rows of jewel-colored jars that lined the pantry like trophies. She packed plums, pears, gooseberries or rhubarb into Kilner jars, covered them with a light sugar syrup, then stood the jars in a deep pan of water and brought it slowly up to heat. The heat killed off the spoiling organisms, and as the jars cooled, the rubber rings and lids pulled down into a perfect vacuum seal with a satisfying little pop. Stored in the dark, that fruit lasted a full year or more, ready for a crumble in the depths of January. The kit cost a few shillings once and lasted decades. Tinned fruit was sold to us as the modern miracle, but your nan's bottled plums had no additives, no tin taste, and cost a fraction of the price. Number 10. Bottling tomatoes for winter sauce. When the tomato plants all ripened at once, your nan refused to let a single one rot. She'd skin them in a quick dunk of boiling water, pack them tight into jars with a pinch of salt and a basil leaf, and process them in the water bath just like her fruit. The natural acidity of the tomato did half the preserving work, the heat did the rest, and the vacuum seal kept them sound until the following summer. All winter long, a jar of those bottled tomatoes became the base of a stew, a soup, or a sauce, tasting of August sunshine when the garden outside was frozen solid. A glut that would have gone soft on the vine became months of meals. We hand over good money for tinned chopped tomatoes now, never thinking that the best ones we ever tasted came out of a jar on Nan's shelf. Number 9. Salting fish to keep for a year. This trick goes back centuries, and your Nan's mother did it without a second thought. A glut of fish, or a cheap box from the market, was gutted, split, and packed in coarse salt in layers in a crock or barrel. The salt drew out every drop of moisture, the very thing bacteria need to multiply, leaving fish that was hard as a board and would keep for the best part of a year with no cold at all. To use it, she soaked it overnight in fresh water, changing the water 2 or 3 times, to draw the salt back out and plump the flesh up again. Salt cod, salt herring, all the same simple principle. It fed coastal and inland families alike through the leanest months. A handful of salt against a year of protein was a bargain no one could ignore. Number 8. Cold smoking over the range. For those with the knack, smoke was both flavor and armor. After salting, fish or a side of bacon would be hung in the cool smoke of a slow smoldering fire, oak or beech, never resinous pine, for hours or days. The smoke laid down compounds that dried the surface and actively killed off the bacteria that cause rot, while leaving the food cold enough not to cook. The result kept for weeks or months where fresh fish would have turned in a day. Country families had a proper smoking shed or chimney. Townsfolk made do with a clever box over the range. A kipper, a smoked ham, a side of streaky, all of it born from the simple discovery that smoke preserves. We treat smoked food as a luxury now. To your Nan's people, it was survival you could taste. Number 7. Butter kept under brine. Before the fridge, fresh butter would turn rancid in days as the air got at the fat. So your Nan kept hers in a glazed butter crock, packed down hard and covered with a layer of cold, salted water, a brine, that sealed it from the air completely. She'd pour off the old brine and top it with fresh every couple of days, and the butter stayed sweet for weeks on the coldest larder shelf. Some families worked the butter with a little extra salt kneaded right through it, which preserved it for longer still and gave that proper, salty, old-fashioned taste. A pound of farm butter was precious, far too dear to let a scrap go off. That humble crock of water did the work of a fridge for nothing, and the butter never picked up a single off flavor from anything sharing the shelf. Number 6. Christmas mincemeat made in October. Here's a preserve hiding in plain sight on every festive table. Real mincemeat, the kind for mince pies, was made weeks, even months ahead, and got better for the wait. Your Nan mixed dried fruit, apple, sugar, spices, the zest of citrus, a good amount of shredded suet, and a generous slosh of brandy or rum, then packed it into jars and left it in the cold to mature. The sugar, the suet fat coating everything, and the alcohol together created conditions where nothing could spoil. She'd stir it weekly and feed it another spoonful of spirit. Made in October, it was perfect by Christmas and would keep happily into the new year and beyond. A jar of decent mincemeat costs real money now and tastes of the jar. Hers tasted of a month of anticipation and a craft handed down the family line. Number 5. Candied peel and crystallized fruit. Nothing, but nothing, was thrown away, not even an orange skin. Your Nan simmered citrus peels slowly in ever stronger sugar syrups over several days until the sugar had driven out all the moisture and saturated the peel right through. Dried off, that candied peel kept for a year or more in a tin, ready to chop into cakes and puddings. Glacé cherries, crystallized ginger, even angelica and whole crystallized fruits were made the same patient way, sugar standing in as a preservative exactly as it does in jam. It turned a worthless scrap or a fleeting glut into a store-cupboard treasure that lasted through every season of baking. A bag of candied peel costs a small fortune at Christmas now. Hers was practically free, made from the bits the rest of the world bins, and it never once went off. Number 4. Fruit drowned in alcohol. This one was as much pleasure as preservation. Come autumn, your nan went out to the hedgerows for sloes, those bitter little blue-black plums, pricked each one with a fork, and dropped them into a bottle with sugar and a measure of gin. Months later, the sloe gin came out a deep ruby red, the alcohol having drawn out the fruit and locked it away from spoilage entirely. Booze is one of the oldest preservatives there is. The grander version was the Rumtopf, a great crock to which she added each fruit as it came into season through the summer: strawberries, cherries, peaches, each layer buried under sugar and rum. By Christmas, you had a jar of boozy preserved fruit to spoon over everything. Free hedgerow fruit and a bottle of spirit kept a whole summer's bounty alive right through the dark months. Number 3. The dripping pot the supermarkets buried. Here's the one the food industry spent millions teaching us to throw away. After every roast, your nan poured the hot fat through a muslin to strain out the burnt bits, then let it set in a ceramic pot on the cool larder shelf. That clean, rendered dripping kept for many weeks with no fridge at all, because pure fat, with the moisture cooked out of it, gives bacteria nothing to grow on. It went into everything: frying eggs, roasting potatoes to a crisp no oil can match, spread on bread with a pinch of salt. It was free, it was flavor, and it was a way of making one Sunday joint feed you for a fortnight. Then we were sold the idea that fat was the enemy, and a bottle of vegetable oil was modern and clean. We poured the dripping down the drain and paid for the privilege. Your nan would have been appalled at the waste. Number 2. Mushroom ketchup, the umami in a bottle. This was the secret weapon that vanished almost completely. Long before brown sauce came in a plastic bottle, your nan made her own dark, savory seasoning from a glut of mushrooms. She layered them with salt, left them to release their juices for a day or two, then simmered the strained liquor with spices and vinegar until it was a thin, intensely savory black sauce. Bottled and sealed, it kept for years on the shelf, and a single splash gave stews, gravies, and pies a deep, meaty richness that made cheap cuts taste expensive. It was the original umami hit, used in British kitchens for 200 years. A few pence of mushrooms past their best became a year's worth of flavor. Almost nobody makes it now. We buy stock cubes and bottled sauces instead, never knowing their great-grandmother had something far better in the larder. Number 1. The home-cured flitch of bacon. And at the very top, the king of every preserving trick your nan's family ever knew. A whole side of a pig, the flitch, was rubbed hard with salt and saltpeter, day after day for weeks, the salt drawing out every drop of moisture until nothing could spoil. Then it was hung in the cool of the kitchen or the chimney corner, sometimes smoked, and left. That single flitch fed a family for the best part of a year, a rasher here, a chunk for the pot there, the most important food in the house, hanging in plain sight. For cottagers who kept a pig fattened on scraps, it was the difference between a hungry winter and a fed one. And the whole village gathered when the pig was killed, because nothing on it went to waste. No fridge, no freezer, no plastic. Just salt, smoke, patience and skill, turning one animal into a year of meals. It was the beating heart of the self-sufficient British kitchen, and we have very nearly forgotten how it was done. So there you have it. 25 ways your nan beat hunger, waste, and the calendar, all without a freezer in sight. Try just one this autumn. Wrap a few apples in newspaper, or salt down a crock of beans, and see if she wasn't right all along. Tell me in the comments which trick your own nan swore by, and which one you'd never dare attempt. She knew. Now you know too.